a social behavior. It is a
That's
social act. I mean, politeness is definitely a social act, but it's a social behavior. It's a social behavior or etiquette within a culture or across cultures. So it's a social behavior. Social means that since we speak of pragmatics as how to use language in an appropriate social context. I mean, we don't live as isolated individuals. We all need to live in a social environment, social milieu, they say. Yeah. So politeness then is a social behavior or etiquette within a culture or across cultures. That's on page, that's chapter 6. Chapter 6,
for
page
instance, doctor, for
summary.
instance,
The summary, by the way. Uh, the summary, chapter 6. Let's skim through this carefully.
in culture of South Korea, they always would ask you about your age before your name.
That's on pragmatic grounds. They ask
Yeah,
about age. Yeah, is that Lena or
yeah,
Dina?
Lena,
Lena or Dina?
Lena.
Yeah, okay, Lena. Can you elaborate on this?
In South Korea, they always would ask about your age before your name, even if you're older than them, like 1 month. They
Yeah,
would respect you.
yeah, of course. I
They
mean, which is
consider that um, a age difference, so they would use a
they
polite
would treat
way
you
to talk to
differently.
them. Yeah,
Yeah, they would treat you differently. Yeah,
right.
which is a very good gesture in the Arab culture, of course. In the Arab culture, we have great respect for age. We do have great respect for age. This is reflected in our behavior. Uh, so as we address old people, as we try to give them a hand, uh, in the Turkish culture, if there is an employer, a boss, and an old employee, the boss would address the old employee with the plural pronoun out of respect. Yeah. Uh, this did exist in most cultures, by the way. But nowadays, it seems that this attitude is sort of declining. It's declining. Uh, some people have no respect for age. They have no respect for parents. They are trying to revolt against the proper social norms of society. And by the way, in some cultures, I mean, women. I mean, the wife avoids use calling her husband by name. You know what they say? In some cultures, I've seen in the Arab cultures. How would a wife address her husband? Any idea?
زوجي أو أبو الأولاد.
Yeah, Abu al is one. In some cultures, by the way, they say Abuna. Abuna for her husband. So she uses Abuna, or as you said, Abu. In our culture, it's we call him father of, out of respect again. Same applies to the wife. Same applies to the wife. So they use and ab. Okay, right. Uh, so in to achieve etiquette, to achieve etiquette, uh, one has to observe three principal components. One is perception of the social ethics. Perception of the social ethics. We have to observe the social ethics of any given society. That's why the English proverb reads, when in Rome, can anybody complete this? When in Rome, what do we do? That's a famous proverb, English proverb. They say, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. You see what I mean? This is a very good proverb, by the way. Proverbs are quite relevant to behavior. They are a source of social behavior. Yeah. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. What does that mean? Yeah, that's closely related to social behavior, to politeness. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. That is, دارهم. In Arabic we say دارهم ما دمت في دارهم. Is this clear? Can anybody paraphrase this? دارهم ما دمت في دارهم. دارهم, that's داريهم, yeah? In other words, try to have respect for the social behavior. Perception of social ethics. Every society has a set of social ethics, and they like every member of that community or society to respect them. This is, of course, not to say that we should respect misconduct. Yeah, but it goes like this: when in Rome, do what the Romans do. We have to perceive. We have to perceive the social ethics in order to sound polite. Don't impose yourself. Don't always be critical of certain aspects. Don't be critical of their language, their way of life, their way of dressing, etc. That's one thing. The other is perception of individual ethics. Perception of individual ethics. Everybody, again, apart from social ethics, everybody has some sort of individual, yeah, ethics. So don't try again to impose yourself. This is, in most cases, misunderstanding arises, and sometimes violence. Violence, not just misunderstanding. Violence erupts because we have no respect for the set of social ethics and the set of individual ethics. I mean, we shouldn't always treat people, yeah, the way we wish them to be. So in the relationship, say between a son and a father, a son and a grandfather, a wife and a husband, a student and a teacher, we should observe the set of individual ethics. For instance, in our culture, people like to be called with their titles. Yeah, with their titles. Yeah, so that's why we say we use words like excellency, eminence, his eminence, his excellency. Uh, yeah, his excellency. In Arabic, we do use عطوفة فضيلة فضيلة الشيخ مثلا، فضيلة المفتي، عطوفة رئيس الجامعة مثلا. They like to be they like to be called with their titles. So if you don't do that, that would be a sign of disrespect. In the Western society, if you check the names of authors, prominent figures, you won't find doctor, for instance, or professor or whatever. Noam Chomsky, for instance, is a prominent figure in the United States, a linguist, a prominent linguist. If you check any Western, I mean, any book published in the West wouldn't have titles like doctor, professor, chairman, dean, etc. They simply write their name. That's part of their culture. They don't mind. They don't mind people calling them even by first name, not necessarily with his surname, depending on the relationship, the type of relationship. So when two friends talk to each other, they don't use titles. On page 6, I think. Page 7. Yeah. Look at this dialogue. Page 7. Okay. Now, who would use, hey, Bucky, got a minute? For instance. Hey, Bucky. That's on page 7, the summary. Hey, Bucky, that's B. We have A, 1A, and B. Hey, Bucky, got a minute? Who would use this? Where would this dialogue take place? Who are the participants? Judging by the style. Yeah. Have you all got this summary? Page 7, chapter 6, is it? Yeah. Politeness.
7.
Chapter 7. Okay. Chapter 7, page 7. Yeah. Who would you? Where would this sort of conversation or dialogue take place? Who is involved? I mean, would this be used to address, say, a teacher or
Teacher and
Would it be
student?
between a student and a teacher?
No.
Where would it take place? Hey, Bucky. Hey, John. Got a minute?
Maybe between friends.
Between friends, yeah. This shows that they are close friends.
Yes.
That's why the style is informal. But look at a dialogue between a student and a teacher. Excuse me, Mr. So and so, but can I talk to you for a minute? Yeah, this is how conversation goes between a teacher, between a student and a teacher. To start with, they say, "Excuse me." That's one thing. Excuse me, right? Two, he uses a title, Mr. So and so. Three, can I talk to you for a minute? He uses a modal. He uses what? An indirect speech act directive. An indirect directive. Can I talk to you for a minute? In other words, instead of saying, I want to talk to you for a minute, yeah, that would sound rude, of course. So first they use excuse me, then they use the title, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss. Then, can I talk to you for a minute? I mean, this is how human language works. How language reveals politeness. Yeah. So we have to observe the set of social ethics, perception of individual ethics, yeah, perception of individual ethics. In Arabic, I think there's a saying, خاطب الناس على قدر. Are you familiar with this?
منازلهم.
خاطب الناس على قدر عقولهم. So this shows that we have to respect individual differences. There are individual differences which we need to observe. Yeah. So perception of individual ethics. So Afnan, for instance, is different from Yazid, is different from Ruqayya. I mean, even within the same family, you know, the father or mother should be able to address everybody according to his set of ethics in order to show respect. Yeah, okay. So respect differences. Right. 3 is perception of, that's on page, again, on page 8. You had this on page 8, yes? Page 8. Have you all got it?
Yes.
For politeness, the summary. For politeness purposes, 3 principal components of interaction are taken into consideration. 1, perception of social ethics. That's to say, habits and traditions. Don't be critical of people's habits or traditions. 2 is perception of individual ethics. Individual ethics. Ruqayya, can you spell the word individual? Ruqayya. Are you there, Ruqayya? Reem. or Razan? Razan. Anybody? I mean, can anybody spell the word individuals? Individual?
Spell?
Yeah, individual. Can you spell it?
Yeah, INDIVIDUAL.
UAL. That's very good. Yeah. Say it again. Can you repeat?
Individual.
Yeah.
Yeah. INDIVIDUAL.
INDI. Yeah.
VIDUAL.
Yeah. Okay. Individual. INDIVIDUAL. Individual ethics. Perception of individual ethics. 3 is perception of specific arena of activity, lower to higher. Lower, that means taken into account lower position to higher status, status or position, younger to older. Addressing parents, for instance, not just it's not just an. I mean, we have a student-teacher relationship, a son or daughter parents relationship, a patient doctor, for instance, medical doctor.
Employee and manager.
Pardon?
Employee, between employee and manager.
Employee and employer or manager.
Manager.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We have to take all these into account. If we use the same discourse, the same style, that doesn't work. That's why some people are offended. They are irritated if one of these components is violated. Social ethics, individual ethics, or arena, specific arena of activity. So we have to observe these 3 main factors. Try to observe these, and you'll be safe. I mean, your message will get across. Most violence, by the way, erupts because of violation of one or all 3 of these. That's why in some Western, it's not some, all Western societies, they have what we call an integration program. You know what that means? An integration program. Integration. So when they have immigrants from any part of the world, Vietnam, Syria, Korea, North Korea, South Korea. They have refugees from Africa. I mean, they have an integration. They call it an integration program, where to start with, the student, the immigrant or the resident sometimes must have a language course, an intensive language course, because language reflects thought. So we can't, a person cannot integrate if he doesn't know the language, because the language is the key to culture, is the key to people's minds. So since there is no, if somebody doesn't master a language, there will always be a linguistic barrier. That's why communication fails. Yeah. So sometimes it takes 1 or 2 years. For such a program to be implemented, or to to take effect. Of course, integration does not mean that one has to abandon his values. If it's mutual, the relationship is mutual. You have to respect or perceive the social ethics of the country where you live, and at the same time, they would respect your values. They don't usually interfere. This happens in communities or societies characterized by diversity. Diversity, you know what that means? Diversity. 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 Some societies have diversity, which means التنوع. Different التنوع. Different colors, different, although I don't believe in races, because we all have the same race. We are called mankind. So we all descended from one parent, one family. Yeah. So anyway, respect of language differences, of color, of faith, religion, that is, again, cultural background. So people, for instance, wouldn't object to somebody using his or her mother tongue. There's nothing wrong with that. So an Arab can easily use Arabic. He wouldn't be forbidden to use his native language, but at the same time, he must master the target language. This is why they conduct TOEFL exams or test of English as a foreign language, and you have to score high. High. You must have a high score. Why? Because you can't communicate without mastering the language, and of course, mastering the language means mastering the culture. Yeah. Right. Okay. So these are three principal components: social ethics, individual ethics, arena of activity, or specific arena of activity. Right. Now there is a key term here, which is face. Face in pragmatics is a technical term. That does not mean one's face, Face. Face on page 6. Face. Afnan, can you read this?
Yes, doctor.
Page 6.
The face threatening at?
The public self-image, person. Face, it begins with the public self-image.
In page 7?
Page 6. Page 6. Chapter 7.
Wait, doctor. A face once?
No, before that, the previous sentence, the previous page, the one before it. Yeah, then we need to define face first, then we'll have face once.
Yes.
Yeah.
The public self-image of a person, it refers to that emotional and social sense of self that everyone has and expects everyone else to recognize.
Okay. Now it's a public self-image of a person. Every person has a public self-image, which refers to that emotional and social sense of self. So everybody likes to be treated according to his public self-image, which refers to the emotional and social sense of self. Okay? That everyone has and expects others, yeah, to recognize. You see what I mean?
Yes, Doctor.
It's the public self-image. I mean, every person has a public self-image. Yeah, we all have. We can tell that. We can read the mind, the psychology of a certain person. He could be independent. He could be emotional. He could be sociable. Sociability is relative. There are degrees of sociability. It's relative. So some people are too sociable, others are less sociable. Some people are independent. They don't like people to interfere, to put their nose, as they say, in their affairs. Yeah, they don't like people to put their nose in their affairs. They are independent, so they like to be treated that way.
Yes.
Don't try to make him dependent, him or her dependent, because he's not that type of person. Yeah. So
Yes.
it's the self-image, the public self-image of a person, which refers to the emotional and social sense of self that everyone has and expects everyone else to recognize it. Some people like to keep a distance. Yeah.
Mhm.
Others believe in no barriers. No barriers. No barriers. Sometimes the policy of the open door policy, they call it, sometimes doesn't work. It causes problems, misunderstanding. They say familiarity breeds contempt. That's another proverb, by the way. Familiarity breeds contempt, which means one extra mark for anybody who gets the Arabic equivalent of this proverb. Yeah. Familiarity breeds contempt. You may use dictionaries if you like. Just write translation, the Arabic equivalent of familiarity breeds contempt.
الألفة تقود إلى الازدراء.
الألفة تقود إلى الازدراء. Is that a translation given by dictionary? Who's that? Who's A? Who's A?
ألا.
Ala. Yeah. Ala. I have more than one Ala.
ألا المرافي.
Okay. Okay. Right. Can you? That's a literal translation, by the way. I mean, as you know, idioms and proverbs are used figuratively. In other words, they can't be rendered word for word. because that violates meaning. Yeah, that's a paraphrase. I mean, that's a paraphrase. Familiarity breeds contempt. What does it mean? What does it say? الألفة
تولد الاحتقار.
تولد الاحتقار. Yeah, in Arabic we say الألفة تسقط الكلفة. يعني ما بيكون في كلفة بين الاثنين.
Yes.
That causes, sometimes it does cause, it reflects negatively, not positively, on one's relationship with others. So, in other words, try to keep a certain degree of formality. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Keep some sort of distance. Yeah. So, okay. Right. We have two types here. We have face once. Face once. Now, we may use language politely. We may convey the same message. We may convey the same message. One in a polite manner. The other is in an impolite manner. It's advisable to use a polite way to save the face of the person. So it's the same message rendered in two different ways. It may sound face saving, where the person will be happy, or face threatening. Face threatening, which sounds bad.
Mhm.
And the person will feel bad about it. It's the same message, but rendered in two different ways. Now, suppose that somebody is making a noise.
Yes.
You can address him in two different ways. Look, let's have a look at page 7. Him and her.
Yeah.
A man and a woman. Each one tries to convey the same message, but it's rendered differently by different persons. So him, for instance, says, I'm going to tell him to stop that awful noise right now.
Yes.
I'm going to tell him to stop that awful noise right now. Now, this sounds in the Western culture, of course. In the English culture, this would sound face threatening. So the person will definitely feel bad about it. Her, perhaps you could just ask him if he's going to stop soon because it's getting a bit late and people need to get to sleep. Now that sounds face saving. The other sounds face threatening. Yeah. Which may have a bad reaction. Now suppose that there is a learning or teaching context. Some students are trying to cheat. Now using pronouns like you. So instead of saying you are cheating, that sounds safe, face threatening. Yeah, you are cheating. Because sometimes it's better not to criticize people in public.
Yes.
Because they feel offended. Same applies to a family setting. if the father or the mother addresses one of his children in that way. Now, the ideal method is to say some students are cheating. Some students.
Yeah.
That would be face saving. Of course, you already know, I mean, the students who are cheating. Even when the Prophet, peace be with him, received revelation, he would be given the names of certain hypocrites. Hypocrites, you know what that means?
منافق.
Munafiqeen, yeah? I mean,
Yeah.
the archangel Gabriel would give him a list of names of such persons, but he would never use a face threatening statement. He would say ma balu aqwaman. It means some people. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's have page 8. Using pronouns to show respect. Number one, under number 3, we have 3 principal components: social ethics, individual ethics, and specific arena of activity. Let's see how this is reflected in the use, not user, in the use of pronouns. So, for instance, we use plural forms of address. Oh, I'm so sorry about this. You should have told me. Time is up, yes?
It's okay, doctor.
Yeah, sorry for keeping you. Do you have a class after this?
Yes دكتور.
Yeah, okay, right.
دكتور بدنا نسألك على
Do you have any
الامتحان.
questions? Any questions?
عن الامتحان بس مادة الامتحان شو دكتور؟
مادة الامتحان, the exam will be a piece of cake. So you'll enjoy it.
إن شاء الله.
Yeah, it's going to be a piece of cake. You have true and false and multiple choice. Those who take part, who attend regularly, will have no problem at all. It covers all chapters 1 to 6, and just the first page of politeness. Okay.
Okay.
So you'll have true and false, and multiple choice. You have to exercise critical thinking. Yeah. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask. You all have the summary, yes?
Yeah, doctor.
Okay, right. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, okay. Right.